Hello everyone and welcome to my first of two videos on this, the Minolta Maxxum 4. In this video we're going to cover what everything on the camera is. In the second video we'll talk about all the operational details of the camera. So let's get going. First thing with the Minolta Maxxum 4 is that it is a 35mm interchangeable lens, single lens reflex SLR camera. What does that mean? It can take any 35mm film within the limits of the camera's ISO range. It uses a single lens here on the front of the camera, which you can remove and put a different lens on at any time when you're not taking a photo without affecting the images. The light passing through the lens reaches this mirror and then bounces up to a pentamirror system up here and out to the viewfinder eyepiece in the back. And so you can see pretty well what will be on the film until you take the photo. The Minolta Maxxum 4 has shutter speeds of 30 seconds to 1/2000th as well as bulb, and if you shoot in continuous burst mode, a 1.7 frame per second burst speed. The viewfinder on the back of the camera right up here has 0.75x magnification and 90% frame coverage. What does that mean? 0.7x magnification, 0.75x magnification means that what you see in the viewfinder will be 75% of the size of what's going to be on the film. 90% frame coverage means that if you assume that what you're looking at right now is what will be on the film, then about 5% on each side and 5% on the top and bottom will be on the film, but not in your viewfinder. So those specs combined tell us two things. The first is that this was meant to be used for autofocus. 75% magnification is very small for manual focus use, so it'll be a bit of a challenge. Autofocus will be much easier. And then the 90% frame coverage means that this was meant to be more of an entry-level camera, because at the lab, when film was dropped off at the labs would automatically correct things like slight misalignments and so forth when making the prints, and that amount of image crop in the viewfinder left labs more room to make alignment corrections during printing. The focusing screen in this camera can be seen if you remove the lens, and it's a fixed focusing screen, meaning you cannot remove it, and basically it just marks. It's a plain field with marks for the autofocus points. As well as, I believe there's also a circle in there that I think is also for the spot metering mode. The flash sync on this camera is 1/90th of a second, and basically this camera is exactly the same as the Minolta Maxxum 5, except that instead of having a metal lens mount, it has a plastic lens mount. But insofar as I know, functionally they are identical or close to identical. The target market for the Minolta Maxxum 4 was the advanced entry-level user, meaning it's somebody who still wanted an entry-level camera but was more comfortable with a lot of the ways that cameras worked, and so this had a lot of features on it that might be attractive to someone in that market. It was made by Minolta in China from 2002 until 2004. I think this was part of the first generation, if not one of the first camera models that Minolta fully outsourced to Minolta, but I could be wrong. I'm sorry, to their production facility in China. But I could be wrong on that, and if I am, someone will correct me in the comments. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go through this camera as we tend to do, and talk about what everything on the camera is, and in the second video talk about how to use it all. Firstly, here on the side and side back, these are your strap bars, and this is what you can connect your camera strap to. This is your mode dial, your function button, and as you can see, the mode dial is not locked, it just spins. This is your IISO type flash hot shoe, which stands for Intelligent ISO. It's a proprietary Sony hot shoe, well, at the time proprietary Minolta hot shoe. No one is using this type of hot shoe anymore, so if you're going to get a flash that mounts on this camera, it's, to the best of my knowledge, going to be a used flash, and it will need the proprietary Minolta and later Sony Alpha hot shoe type. This is your P program button, LCD screen, your indicator for your on-off switch, which is on the back, shutter release. These marks up here indicate different scene modes that the camera can use. This is I believe your scene mode selection button, that sounds right, and this is your self-timer selection button here. On the front of the camera, we have here this light, which will blink as your self-timer counts down. We have the front control dial, the lens mount button right here. No depth of field preview. I think that might be a difference with the Maxxum 5. I feel like the 5 has a depth of field preview button right here. This is your autofocus interface. Your lenses for the alpha mount lenses have a screw drive autofocus, and that's the screw drive coupling. This is the lens lock pin, and then it locks the lens in place so it doesn't pop out of the camera. Lens release button right here. lens mounting index, electronic contacts. Here is your manual focus, autofocus selection switch. This up here is your aperture, your exposure value compensation button, and this is your pop-up flash release button right here. The back of the camera has a few things. We have a film type window right here, viewfinder eyepiece. Your on and off switch is right here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Autofocus button, spot focus, or spot metering rather, selection button right here, which also has a slow sync next to it, which indicates this will be a slow sync flash control button. If you have the date controls on the back of your camera, date select, these two buttons right here control how the date is imprinted. I'm pretty sure that the dates on this no longer print accurately, so if you don't have that, it's not a loss, and if you do, it's not worth using. Once you print a date on your film, it's really hard to Photoshop it out. This is your film rewind button right here, so if you get partway through a roll of film and want to manually rewind it, that's how you do that. And this is your film back release button right here. The bottom of the camera doesn't have much, but we have the battery chamber door right here, and we'll see how to change batteries in the second video. Tripod socket, serial number, and registration and made-in information. To get into the camera, we simply push the back release button and the back will pop open. Here we have the film cassette chamber. You'll load your film in here so that it can be taken through the camera to take your photos. We'll see that in the second video. DX code readers, so if your film has a silver and black checkerboard looking thing on it, these little pins can read that to get information about the film speed from your film cassette. This is your camera's shutter. These glossy plastic rails are your film guide rails that keep the film moving through the camera lined up correctly so that it can be advanced and rewound smoothly. For those of you with the date imprint model, this little window right here is a light. That's what actually prints the date. So after you take the photo and the film is advanced, this light prints the date onto the photo as it passes. Film take-up spool here. On the back of the camera, we have the film pressure plate right here is your main feature. This sandwiches the film flat right here in front of the shutter area so that it's properly aligned to focus, to receive focused light from the lens. This little spring right here puts some pressure on the film as it's being passing over the film take-up spool so that it advances correctly. This foam gasket right here prevents light from fogging the film as the information is displayed through this window. These two little springs keep the film cassette aligned properly so the film can advance off of it correctly. And one last thing I almost forgot, this little index over here on this side is how you will load how you know that you've pulled the film leader out far enough. I do have some things not to do with your Minolta Maxxum 4. The first one is don't leave it in your car. It does kind of look like a digital camera and it could easily be a theft target, but above and beyond that, extreme heat and extreme cold can affect the lubricating oils in the camera, can damage the plastic parts of the camera's body, and can even cause the grip to crack or fail over time. Extreme heat and extreme cold are very damaging to cameras. It's never a good idea to store any camera in a car. When you have the lens off, don't touch the mirror behind it because your finger oils can cause that mirror to tarnish, which will affect your metering, autofocus, and manual focus ability and also the quality of the image in your viewfinder. When you have the camera back open, don't press on the shutter. Your finger oils can get on it and cause the leaves to be a bit sticky, which will impair their function, but more so if you push those leaves too hard and they jump into the wrong track, because each of those individual leaves has a different track. But if it jumps into the wrong one, then when the shutter fires, two leaves can intersect each other and jam and completely brick your shutter. Don't store your camera in a plastic bag or box because plastic is moisture permeable, and once that water gets into that plastic bag or box, it can cause fungus to grow on the lens elements, either in your viewfinder or your lens. In your lens itself, it will absolutely affect the image quality. If you do have a plastic bag or box to store it in, make sure you get a good and rechargeable desiccant pack, the kind that you can toss in the oven after it's changed color so that you can recharge it so that it keeps your camera from getting fungus on it. And also don't let your Minolta Maxxum 4 get wet. It's not weather sealed, and if it gets wet, the electronics in it could very easily short out and ruin your camera. And just remember that your Minolta Maxxum 4 is a precision tool that should be handled with care and respect. As long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. So that's everything about this in the first video. If you want to learn about the operational aspects of it, here's a card that you can click on to go straight to the second video. See you guys over there.